terrorism of the Pilgrims, John Mason, John Underhill, Connecticut, Massachusetts Bay Colony. The terrorism of the Pilgrims, such as the Mystic River Massacre in Connecticut in 1637 and the Pound Ridge Massacre in New York in 1644, those terroristic acts, those terroristic massacres had a higher body count and more children that were killed than the terrorism of ISIS in Egypt 2 days ago in 2017. And Thanksgiving was declared for both the Pound Ridge and the Mystic Massacre. You killed 200 more people in Mystic, 300 more people in Pound Ridge, and then we declared Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. The peace. Just give it to me straight. Thank God. Thank God we defeated the Pequot. You defeated them militarily. You defeated their military, and that's what you mean by no, we didn't. Thank God we wiped the Pequot out, not just militarily, but we killed their children too, so there is no trace, no way that the Pequot will ever rise from the ashes. Pequot, Pequot, the Shawnee, was rise from the ashes. So, Dorothy Bradford. So, the Pilgrims were such losers. As soon as they got to the New World, Dorothy Bradford killed herself. So, that's William Bradford's wife. William Bradford's wife. 40% of the Pilgrims died the first year, and Pilgrim Plantation eventually absorbs into the Massachusetts Bay Colony in 1691. Dorothy Bradford, she was kind of like, fuck this shit, right? So they wanted to get away from the secular Netherlands and all the freedom that they saw in the Netherlands and the tolerance that they saw in the Netherlands, because they were afraid that their children were going to be seduced by the materialism of the Dutch culture. So good idea, good thinking there, William Bradford. Go to America to get away from the materialism and the consumerism. Smart thinking. Good. And then it wasn't for freedom. It wasn't for religious freedom. It was for his religious freedom, for him to impose, to be authoritarian. So, yeah, that's why they came all the way to America. So their children had no other option. So their children had no temptations whatsoever. So Dorothy Bradford killed herself. Nehantic Indians. The Nehantic Indians appear to have been the original tribe around Mystic. Sometime before 1600, the Mohegans, a branch of the Algonquin Nation, came down from east of present-day Albany to the New London County area. Their center was in Montville, west of the Thames River, where their descendants live today. Who are the original tribe around Mystic? The Nehantic Indians. So the racist British imperialist invaders and the Dutch invaders used John Underhill and his 130 mercenaries as their primary enforcer. And John Underhill would end up annihilating, vanquishing, like the dodo bird, genociding for all eternity. The Hackensack, the Haverstraw, Munsee, Navesink, Rare. John Underhill was the person that was dragging Native Americans behind the boat until they drowned. John Underhill was one of the people that was cutting the Native Americans innocent Native Americans who were alleged to have stole some pigs, but they didn't steal any pigs. But 7 Native Americans got fucking murdered by John Underhill in 1644. John Underhill would be there at the Mystic River Massacre, killing children, killing babies, and he would go on to the Stonington Massacre, where he burnt down another Pequot village, and then it would go on to the Fairfield Massacre, where they would try to kill all of the last remaining Pequot. And then the John Underhill, he wanted to kill all the Native Americans, the Carnacy, Manhattan, Rockaway, Matnacock, Massapequa, Marsapake, Sackatoag, the Merrick Indians. Up to 700 Native Americans were killed. The Wappingers were killed in the Wappinger Massacre, the Pound Ridge Massacre. So 500 to 700 people, the entire village. There was only 5 people that escaped. So this is something John Underhill kept doing. He would destroy towns. He would ride into the city and kill every, like, My Lai massacre. Only he did it all the time, and he got nothing but accolades, and he was championed. The the Wekwasgeek, the Sint Sink, the Kitchawank, the Notch PM, the Siwanoi, the Tankite, Tankiteke, Wappinger from the east of the Hudson, so New Jersey, Hudson, Long Island, Hackensack, Haverstraw, Muncie, Navesink, Raritan, Tap. How many people did John Underhill help to eliminate, to genocide? Well, you got the Hackensack tribe, the Haverstraw, the Muncie, the Navesink, the Raritan, the Tappan bands from New Jersey, the Wekwasgeek, the Sint Sink, the Kitchawank, the Nakpim, the Siwanoi, the Tankiteki, and the Wappinger from the east of the Hudson, the Carnegie, Manhattan, Rockaway, Matinacock, Massapequa, Marsapake, Seka, Toag, the Merrick Indians on Long Island. The Manassas natives on Block Island only Underhill saw, and John Underhill wrote about them before he wiped them all out. We met with several famous wigwams with great heaps of pleasant corn ready shelled. Met with several famous wigwams with great heaps of pleasant corn ready shelled, but not being able to bring it away, we did throw their mats upon it and set fire and burnt it. Many well-wrought mats our soldiers brought from thence in several delightful baskets. This is the genocidal nature of the Pilgrims. No wonder Dorothy Bradford killed her fucking self with all this damn bullshit, all this misery and genocide, and there's no damn food. So we boiled my son and ate him, and I said to her on the next day, give your son, that we may eat him. But she has hidden her son. 2 Kings 6:29. Miantonimo is the chief of the Narragansett. So the Canonicus is going to die 1647, but he's going to get. Miantonimo was friendly to the racist British imperialist invaders, the colonists of Massachusetts Bay Corporation, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. But Miantonimo was also accused of being treacherous. So the Narragansett, the grand sachem of the Narragansett was Canonicus. Canonicus eventually steps down 1636, and Miantonimo was a nephew of Canonicus. And so Miantonimo becomes the grand sachem of the Narragansett in 1636, 1 year before the Mystic River Massacre. There's a monument to Miantonimo in Sachem's Park, Norwich, Connecticut, Miantonimo Memorial Park in Newport, Rhode Island, and there's a street named after Miantonimo and Canonicus in bordering Middletown, Rhode Island. After reading Einstein's papers on general, that acceleration cannot be distinguished from gravity. What's the difference between gravity and acceleration? Nobody knows. So just write it down, and it's the Pequot and the Mohegan, they separate. So 1634, Tadabim is killed by the Dutch West Indies main chief executive director, their CEO. So the Dutch West Indies killed the chief of the Pequot, Tadabim, in 1634, which causes the Pequot and the Mohegan to separate. The Pequot and the Mohegan were together. But 1634 happens, and then it all just goes to shit. The Pequot and the Mohegan. They divided the Nehantics, driving the eastern branch to the Pawcatuck River area and the western branch to the Neantic River. All the small tribes from the Connecticut River east of the Weekapaug Creek in Rhode Island were soon subjugated and made part of the Pequot territory. Only the large Narragansett tribe to the east remained. The Nehantics had to separate because the Pequot and the Mohegan separated. Only the large Narragansett tribe to the east remained independent, and they were continually attacked. So the Indian name Mystic is the Native American name. The Mystic River, it was what the natives called that river, the Mystic River. It is still continues to be used today, at least 1637, a letter by Roger Williams. And Roger Williams seems like he might be a cool guy. Roger Williams might be one of the few good pilgrims. John Mason Monument, it stands on Pequot Avenue. The monument for John Mason, ironically, stands on Pequot Avenue. The day after being thankful for everything, then Black Friday, we get our greed on. There was no turkey served at that 1621 feast. The Bradford and Massasoit. Underhill didn't just stop with killing the 500 Pequot, which a Thanksgiving was declared, Pound Ridge Massacre. Let's declare a Thanksgiving for killing all these innocent, people. The children, what the hell did the Pequot children do? Huh, Christians? Hey, Christians, what did those children of the Pequot and the Wagingers and the Munseys? A second Pequot village was attacked, massacred, destroyed on June 5th, 1637, near present-day Stonington. A third Pequot village was attacked, massacred, and destroyed on July 28th, 1637, near present-day Fairfield. So the Stonington Massacre, Fairfield Massacre happened after the Mystic Massacre. So they just kept doing this shit. They kept repeating the same model. Just like ISIS in Egypt, right? Only they kept doing it over and over again. And they did it in the name of God, which is the same thing as ISIS, right? What happened to the Canarsie? What happened to the Manhattan? What happened to the Rockaway? What happened to the Matt Tinnacock? Huh? Where is the Matt Tinnacock at today? The Hackensack and the Kitchawank. Is there any Kitchawanks? All the Kitchawanks, please stand up. The Hackensack, the Mattinacock, Massapequa, Marsapaqua, Marsapaqua, Secatoag, Merrick Indians. So what happened to the Merrick Indians? What happened to the Mattinacock? What happened? Same thing, Dorothy Bradford was like, fuck this shit, and blew her fucking brains out. Governor John Winthrop wrote letters to the citizens of Dover, Delaware, denouncing John Underhill, the bloody fucking butcher. So Governor John Winthrop, the Mr. City on the Hill. John Winthrop didn't like John Underhill. He was a fucking psycho. The Pequot War happened. It seems like there's other Johnstone, the killing of Johnstone. There's all these reasons that are usually traditionally given for why the Pequot War happened, right? They were doing atrocities to the English, and the English were just completely innocent. The slave trading pirate John Stone, he was killed by the Western Neantics. The Western Neantics killed John Stone, and they killed him for a good reason. He was going around kidnapping their children and was going to put them into slavery. So John Stone deserved to die. He was murdered by the Western Neantics, not the Pequot. They might blame the attack on Wethersfield, the killing of John Oldham, then the Tattebim. No. Who got first blood? First blood is on the European Caucasians' hands. They killed Tattebim. Tattebim was assassin of John Oldman. He did the exact same thing. So John Oldman goes to Block Island. It's probably the Meniscus. Probably the Meniscus. Of the only description that we have is the butcher, Underhill. So on Block Island lived the Meniscus Native Americans. In fact, Block Island used to be called the Island of Meniscus, and so the natives were named after that island. And that's a lot of names are named after the location. So what was the reason? Why did the Pequot War even happen? Tattebim was killed first. Never forget Tattebim. In 1633, they said that there was two racist British imperialist invaders who were anchored off the coast of Block Island for the night, and then they were killed by some Native Americans. Why were you at Block Island? Why did you stay all the way to Block Island? You were just, fishing? You were looking for some slaves to capture. What were you doing in Block Island? Just being innocent, not harming nobody, not doing anything to anybody. Living in Connecticut, if you're living on the Mystic River, if you're living on the Pequot River, which is now the Thames River, if you're living in the Pequot Village, which is now New London, if you saw Wethersfield, you saw Windsor, if you saw the Fort Good Hope by the Dutch being established. So if you saw all these things being established, what would you think if you were Native Americans? Welcome, colonist invaders who go around killing lots of beavers. So Roger Ludlow was one of the soldiers in the forces that fought the Pequot at the Swamp Fight. he would petition the General Court to found a settlement on the same location. Being charmed with the landscape under his leadership, Roger Ludlow, the plantation of Uncos was founded in 1639, which later became the town of Fairfield. So it wasn't even called Fairfield, but eventually the Fairfield said that Sassacus was at Quinnipiac in New Haven, Connecticut. The racist British imperialist invaders disembarked at present-day Guilford, where Sachem's Head is, and they executed 3 Pequot Sachems. They captured at the neck of land known today as Sachem's Head. So it wasn't just one Pequot Sachem, they killed 3 Pequot Sachem, and it was Uncas, and Uncas put their head in a tree. There's a place, the Sachem's Head Yacht Club, I swear to God, and they have no irony, they don't feel like they're being racist. Talk about being racist pieces of shit. And they're not saying, let's be Native Americans. They're saying, let's name this city, let's name this location after dead Americans who we murdered and chopped their fucking head off. So they're chasing Sassacus. They found 3 Pequot. At least they said they're Pequot. If they were known to be Pequot, well, they're dead. British imperialist invaders continued on to Quinnipiac, New Haven, to learn that Sassacus, who had been informed of their approach, escaped to Saskwanakut. So where is Sassacus? Well, he was in Quinnipiac. Well, not anymore. Now he's in Saskwanakut, which is known as Fairfield today. Fairfield used to be called Saskwanakut. New Haven used to be called Quinnipiac. The racist British imperialist invaders' force continued on foot to the Housatonic River, encountering scattered groups of Pequot along the way. After crossing the Housatonic River with assistance from their vessels, the racist British imperialist invaders eventually caught up with Sassacus' group at the Saskwanakut, where the last major battle of the Pequot War took place. The Fairfield Swamp Fight on July 13th would be the Munakumuk Swamp. I like that name. So at the Munakumuk Swamp, today it's known as the Pequot Swamp, so there was actually one that switched to the Pequot instead of trying to whitewash it and cover it up. But the Saskwanakut is Fairfield. Saskwanakut houses Saskwa. So the Native Americans' names were Saskwa, the Saskwa natives, and they lived in Saskwanakut. So, the morning of July 14th, under the cover of fog, approximately 60 to 80 Pequot warriors broke through a section of the racist British imperialist invaders' lines and escaped, although many were wounded and killed in the attempt. The racist British imperialist invaders' accounts of Pequot casualties differ, ranging from 7 dead to as many as 60. So that's the Fairfield. Underhill himself is responsible for 20 to 30 Native American tribes completely wiped out, genocided, forever, extincted. They were extincted. Before the Pequot War, Pequot territory was approximately 250 square miles in southeastern Connecticut. The Pequot got to do what they wanted to do. It was their land. Today, this area includes the towns of Groton, Ledyard, Stonington, North Stonington, and southern parts of Preston and Griswold. The Thames and Pawcatuck rivers form the western and eastern boundaries. Long Island Sound, the southern boundary, and Preston and Griswold, southern parts, the northern boundary. Some historic sources suggest the Pequot territory extended 5 to 4 miles east of the Pawcatuck River to an area called Week-a-Paug in Charleston, Rhode Island, prior to the Pequot War. Within Nantucket, I think, is the western Pequot today, and there's the eastern. So there's western Pequot and eastern Pequot Native Americans who live on the reservations today. The Pequot War. So there's about 2,000 Pequot today. In this territory during the early 1600s, there were 8,000 Pequot men, women, and children residing in 15 to 20 villages, between 50 to 400 people each before the war. There's 8,000 people. And then they said smallpox might have taken 4,000. 20 fucking cities, 20 cities with 50 to 400 people in it apiece. These villages were located along the estuaries of the Thames, Mystic, and Pawcatuck rivers and along Long Island Sound. The Wampanoags, led by Massasoit, led by Chief Massasoit, who lived on the shores of Narragansett Bay in what is now Rhode Island, greeted the new settlers in a benevolent manner. Hello. In 1621, Chief Massasoit helped the Pilgrims learn cooking, agriculture, and fishing, enabling those few Europeans who survived the previous harsh winter a chance to flourish in the succeeding years. The Pilgrims would directly return the favor in 1623 when they aided the gravely ill Chief Massasoit back to health. So Pilgrims, Native Americans, what a wonderful union. Made in heaven. Nothing could go wrong here unless you got to put the sun Metacomet's head on a pike. Sometimes you just got to put the children of your political and military allies, you got to put their head on a pike and then put it in the middle of town for 24 years to scare that, like Sachem's head, right? So you got Sachem's head. The Pequot War happened because the Dutch killed Tadabim, because the chief of the Pequot was killed by the Dutch, because John Stone, who the Boston folks, the Puritans banished, who was a pirate, a slave trader. He was, drunk and blasphemy. He put a fucking knife to William Bradford's throat. John Stone did, and so did John Oldham. I think John Oldham and the attack on Wethersfield might be the best case scenario, but they've already attacked the Native Americans for no fucking reason. So after John Oldham gets attacked, this tells you exactly what happens, because all the people that had killed John Oldham were killed themselves. And so there was nobody else to go after. But that didn't stop John Endicott. That didn't stop the Massachusetts and the Connecticut colonies. Yeah, sure, all the people who killed John Oldham might already be dead, but let's go kill some Mnisses. Let's go kill Eastern Neantic. Let's go kill some... What exactly happened with John Oldham? John Oldham, he had helped to establish Wethersfield. So John Oldham got banished out of Boston, but then he redeems himself. He comes back and he gets some followers, and Wethersfield is established by the Men of 10, the 10 men. And so John Oldham probably provoked the fight. He's sitting off the coast of Block Island, and even though he probably provoked the fight, again, just like John Stone, who was killed by the Western Neantics, they were blamed on the Pequot. John Oldham was killed by the Narragansett, possibly the Eastern Neantic and the Mnisses, but not the Pequot. Not the Pequot whatsoever. In fact, it was the Narragansetts, according to this report. There was 14 Narragansetts, and then you got this other ship, the Gallop. The Gallop ship saved it didn't save John. The year is 1636, 1 year before the Mystic River Massacre, 2 years after Tadabim was assassinated. July 20th, 1636, the Block Island Narragansetts killed John Oldham, a dishonest trader. John Oldham had 2 boys and 2 Narragansetts with him. So John Oldham was by himself, and he had 2 nephews and 2 Narragansetts who were with him, and then he was attacked by 14 Narragansetts. And the 14 Narragansetts made the crew prisoners, and then the Gallop ship came across this scene of where they're just taking a whole bunch of crap out of the ship, and they're trying to... So the Gallop ship immediately goes into action, and he attacks the pirates. And most of the 14 Narragansetts were drowned. Only 2 of the 14 Narragansetts were taken prisoner. And so John Oldham, he was killed. John Oldham is killed. His 2 nephews are captured. The ship's cargo was looted. Then the fishing vessel, the Gallop, rescued the boys, tried to tow his sloop to port, but adverse winds affected them, so they couldn't pull the ship to port. They scuttled the ship, but they brought home the 2 nephews, and they were returned to land. So who killed John Oldham? Definitely the Narragansetts, the Block Island Narragansetts. The Mnisses natives live on the Block Island. The Eastern Neantic are around too, but this report says it was all the Narragansetts. And who's the chief of the Narragansetts? Miantonimo. Where's the Pequot? None of them are the Pequot. So the Pequot didn't kill John Oldham. The Pequot didn't kill John Stone. But the Dutch did kill Tadabim, the chief of the Pequot. Tadabim was assassinated. Miantonimo, the chief of the Narragansett, there's suspicion that's put on Miantonimo. Hey, Miantonimo, What's up with your Narragansetts? I thought we were friends, and here John Oldham got fucking butchered. So essentially nobody knows what happened with John Oldham. They just know he was over on Block Island, 14 Narragansetts, Narragansetts. The Narragansetts attack him, and that's all we know. So probably could have been very much an innocent crime, right? Just John Oldham was going for a stroll. Mr. Nice John Oldham just out sailing out and about, just fishing in his own little area, his own little cove, not bothering anybody. And then he was attacked. Poor John Oldham. The Narragansetts convinced the colonists that it was the Pequot tribe who was harboring the natives who killed Oldham. Miantanamo vowed revenge, and then he ordered Nineveh. Who did it? The warriors did it. It was the warriors. I saw the warriors do it. So Miantanamo went to Boston to prove his loyalty to the colonists. He orders Ninigret to assemble the troops, so Miantanamo and Ninigret are ready to go to war, even if it's just for the illusion to be like, well, it wasn't our Narragansetts. It was other Narragansetts, not ours. So Miantanamo, Ninigret are with the English, and they're assembling their troops to pretend that they had nothing to do with it. They blame the Pequot. And even though John Stone was a slave-trading pirate, the Boston ministers would talk about his purity and how great he was. I think that even though John Stone was a criminal, he was a white man, and so when a white man got killed, it made them think about their own mortality. So even though John Stone was a piece of shit who deserved to die, they were like, oh my God, they could just kill us like we've been killing them? Holy. Talk a little bit about this John Oldham thing. John Oldham, Wethersfield, but they just keep looking for a reason. So John Oldham, the slave trading pirate John Stone, puts a knife to William Bradford's throat. So does John Oldham. Everybody wants to kill William Bradford. Dorothy Bradford killed herself. She didn't even want to live around William Bradford. John Oldham puts a knife to Bradford's throat, and so does John Stone. They both did the same thing. John Stone is banished, and then he's going to get killed right away. John Oldham is banished in 1624. And then he comes back and helps to establish Wethersfield in 1634 after Windsor was established, because Wethersfield isn't the oldest Native American village. Get the fuck out of here with that shit, Wethersfield. Get out of here with that. So 1624, John Oldham, he was kicked out of before putting the knife to William Bradford's throat. John Oldham was banished from Plymouth. 10 years before Wethersfield, Connecticut is founded, John Oldham is going to get kicked out of the Plymouth plantation. He was kicked out because they were all supposed to do their duties, and Miles Standish, the guy who likes to put people's heads on pikes, he denounced him. He was like, look, you need to sit, and your scheduled watch is coming up. And so he was insolent. No, I won't do it. Pilgrim's military advisor, Miles Standish, said, you need to do this. John Oldham pulls a knife out on Miles Standish. He's pulling knives out on everybody. John Oldham angrily denounced Miles Standish as a beggarly rascal. You beggarly rascal. Then Lyford and John Oldham were put on trial for plotting against the Plymouth plantation, disturbing their peace, both in respects of their civil and church state, and they were banished from Plymouth in 1624. Later on, John Oldham is going to be if I'm the Narragansett or the Eastern Neantics or the Mnesis, I would be worried about the colonies, the military fort. So Wethersfield, John Oldham redeems himself in the eyes of the Puritans. Maybe not Plymouth Plantation, but with Massachusetts Bay Colony, he becomes the overseer of the gunpowder and the guns. So he's the overseer. So John Oldham redeems himself. Then he helps to establish a fort, a military fort with the intent of colonizing the land in Wethersfield, Connecticut, 1634. So Oldham led a group of 10 men, including Captain Robert Seeley, along the old Connecticut path to establish Wethersfield. They call it the first settlement on the Connecticut River, but they forget Windsor. They forget about Windsor. Wethersfield, how are you going to forget about Wethersfield is established 1634. The women get there 1635. Native Americans called Wethersfield Pyquag. Where are you going? I'm going up to Pyquag. Watertown was another name for Wethersfield. So the Puritan settlement of the 10 men, including John Oldham, Robert Seeley, Thomas Topping, Nathaniel Foote, along with Windsor and Hartford. Wethersfield is represented by one of the three grapevines on the flag of Connecticut, signifying the state's three oldest European settlements. And the town took its name from Wethersfield, a village in the racist British imperialist invaders' country or county of Essex. So he established Wethersfield. He had problems with the colonists, so seems like he's not that great of a guy. And Wethersfield is a fort to the Connecticut Native Americans. You're the Native Americans at Mystic, your Sassacus and your Uncas and your Miantonimo and Ninigret and all the others. Ninigret, Miantonimo, and you got Uncas. Uncas was there. So Sassacus, okay? If you're Sassacus and you see Wethersfield being established and you see Windsor being established and you see Hartford being established, the Dutch, the Fort of Good Hope by the Dutch is being established, and they're killing all the beaver, and they got weapons, and they're just, being total fucking pricks, taking over everything and killing everything. And so because they're imperialist invaders, you should be skeptical of them. They're not just, walking out and about. They're establishing forts. They're establishing military forts. How would you feel if the Chinese started establishing military forts in Connecticut today? That's how the Western... We wouldn't accept Mexico setting up settlements in Connecticut, since we wouldn't accept China setting up settlements in New Mexico. The Native Americans should have been suspicious of the Wethersfield and Windsor and the Dutch forts. They should have been. Now, in Wethersfield, the Pilgrims, the Puritans, the so-called Brownist separatists, the Protestants, they were devout, very strict Christians. They banned Christmas, no Christmas trees in the Pilgrims' place, no Christmas Day celebrations, and, of course, no witches. So they would fine you if you were celebrating Christmas. They hated Christmas. It was a pagan holiday. They were Puritans. They didn't want the fucking bullshit from the Dutch, all that Christmas bullshit in the Netherlands. Fuck that Christmas bullshit. They left the Netherlands because of Christmas. The Pilgrims hated Christmas, and if you were celebrating Christmas, they would fine you and kick you out. Puritans are supposed to be good, honest, pure. They came here for a noble purpose. They weren't here for the commercial ventures. The Puritans are so pure. But what about Salem? What happened in Salem also happened in Wethersfield. Mary Johnson was killed by the residents of Wethersfield by the Pilgrims. The Pilgrims killed Mary Johnson. The Pilgrims killed John and Joan Carrington in 1651. Mary Johnson was convicted of witchcraft and executed in 1648 in Wethersfield. And then John and Joan Carrington was killed 3 years later in 1651. On December 5th, 1649, it is ordered by this court that there shall be a public day of thanksgiving kept by all the churches within this jurisdiction that may be seasonably acquainted therewith upon this day fortnight. Upon this day fortnight. Then landowner Catherine Harrison was convicted, although her conviction was reversed. She was banished and her property was seized by her neighbors. Oh, big shocker there, right? You're a witch! Now give us your property. So Catherine Harrison, John Carrington, Joan Carrington, and Mary Johnson were all killed by the Pilgrims who lived in Wethersfield. So these forts, which were designed to, make the colony, the company, money, they were coming to take shit over. And is it any surprise that pro-genocidal people would also eat themselves, would also accuse each other of being witches? And, I know a lot of people are religious out there, but newsflash, Christians, there's no such thing as witches. There's people that follow the Wiccan thing, and they think that they're not witches. They're not witches. There's no flying on broomsticks. It's bullshit. So Mary Johnson being fucking murdered by the... Just sort of his character was questioned by Plymouth, but they were kind of, devout, crazy people. So we'll give him a pass there. When it comes to setting up Wethersfield, he redeemed himself actually by establishing a colony, even though you should be skeptical of Wethersfield, and they killed their own because they were witches. The witch trials in Wethersfield means that Oldham and company were the true demons who make up demons to slaughter the innocent. The official story, so if we just, so he's a piece of shit, but he was redeemed, so what? what actually happened. Who was right, who was wrong. When you see a fight, they both look like assholes, but the one who starts it is the guilty party. So when we look at this story, who started it? Who began Oldham? John Oldham got killed by a bunch of Narragansetts. Who started it? It was like once the Dutch assassinated Tadabim, once Tadabim, the main chief of the Pequot, was killed in 1634 by the Dutch West Indies Corporation, killed the head of the Pequot, which they split up after that. The official story, who was right, who was wrong. So John Oldham is just over there on Block Island, Narragansetts kill him. So was he there? Was he killing people? Was he trying to kidnap people? John Stone was trying to kidnap people and establish a slave trade. John Oldham just established Wethersfield, and then 2 years after establishing Wethersfield, he gets killed when he's over on Block Island. But if he lives in Wethersfield, which is the river inside of Connecticut, Block Island is outside the state. So why he had to sail all the way to Block Island? Why was he there? I'm sure it wasn't innocent. Was he taking fish? Was he looking for Native Americans? Was he part of the slave trade? Who exactly is John Oldham? Who exactly? Witness was the ship Gallop. So Gallop runs into it, and then that's when we see this horrible, grisly scene. Narragansett taking the loot from the ship and taking it off to the sides. So were they just pirates? Just robbing? Just stealing? That's possible. It's possible Oldham provoked it. It's possible the Native Americans started it. Were Native Americans just defending themselves? Was it revenge? The carnage that the Gallop shipped into is all that we've seen, and we just see that they're taking a bunch of shit from the ship. So if the ship was doing some shit, and then they, of course, go ahead and take your stuff. But I think after Tadabim was slain, that the colonists just got into ritual slaughter. Oh, wait, we could just kill the Pequot? Oh, that was easy. Just kill the Pequot. The chief of the Pequot, just kill him. And then the Dutch and the Pequot still got along afterwards. But the guilty parties. Who's the guilty parties? When you look around, Tadabim is the Pequot chief, assassinated by Jacob Ellikins. The Pequot have only been the victims so far. John Stone is killed by the Western Neantic, not the Pequot. John Oldham was killed by the Narragansett, not, possibly the Eastern Neantic, possibly Mnissis. The Native Americans of Mnissis, the Eastern Neantic, probably the Narragansett, but not the Pequot. So the Pequot didn't kill John Oldham. The Pequot didn't kill John Stone. The Pequot's chief, Tadabim, was killed by Jacob Ellikins. That happened. And so what's justice? What's justice to this thing? The 14 Narragansett who were there, 12 of them drowned, 2 of them were captured. So you still got 2 of the people that provoked this thing. You can ask the 2 survivors what the hell happened. But essentially all the perpetrators were killed or captured. So now essentially Uncas is saying it was the Pequot. The warriors did it. And the English didn't care. They wanted to kill all the Native Americans, so who gives a shit, right? So John Oldham is killed, and we're going to go kill a bunch of Mnissis Indians. All the Narragansetts who killed John Oldham, but 2 were captured. The last 2 were captured, so they're all killed. They were all drowned, and then there's 2 left. So Tadabim gets killed. Sassacus and Uncas, the Mohegan and the Pequot, separate. They were working together under Tadabim. Tadabim gets killed. The Pilgrims get a bloodlust. Can't stop killing the fucking Pequot. They can't stop themselves. So even though the perpetrators were killed, they wanted more. Uncas said it was the Pequot. Then, okay, let's fucking kill the Pequot. This is a 9/11 Iraq thing. So Saudi Arabians attack us on 9/11. So the United States killed 1 million Iraqi people. Like getting punched by this man over here and then turn around and punching this man. That's like killing Peter for the crimes of Paul. That's like killing Peter for Paul's a murderer, so we're going to kill Peter. It doesn't make any sense. Blaming Iraq for 9/11 when it was the Saudi Arabians, and then blaming the Pequot when it was the Narragansetts, or it was the Western Neantics. Western Neantics killed John Stone. Narragansett killed John Oldham. Maybe the Eastern Neantics, maybe Mnissis. Definitely not the Pequot. Definitely not the Pequot. But Uncas, he gets them all pissed off at the Pequot, and so they go after the Pequot. So here's 1644 Major Underhill. He sets fire to the huts, whereupon the natives tried to every way to escape, not succeeding, in which they returned back to the Americans tried every way to escape, not succeeding, in which they returned back to the flames, preferring to perish by fire than to die by our hands. What was most wonderful, that among the vast collection of men, women, and children, not one was heard to cry or scream. This is John Underhill speaking. According to the report of the Indians themselves, the number then destroyed exceeding 500. The vast collection of men, women, and children, not one was heard to cry or scream. They would rather die by the fire than to die by our hands. According to the reports of the natives themselves, the number then destroyed exceeding 500, some say 700, among whom were also 25 Wappingers, our God having collected together there the greater number of our enemies to celebrate one of their festivals. No more than 8 men in all escaped, of whom even 3 were severely wounded. Sergeant Major John Underhill, this is when he was with the Dutch. This is English and the Dutch together killing Indians. The Muncie Massacre, the Pound Ridge Massacre, the killing of the Wappingers. So the Wappingers are getting fucking, they said only 25 of them were Wappingers. They said maybe 500. Some say even 700. God, we killed so many of them. You know, John Underhill's reflected about how many they killed. No more than 8 men in all escaped, of whom even 3 were severely wounded. Oh my gosh. They said the same shit about Mystic Massacre. There's 400 of them and only 5 escaped. There's 700 of them and 8 escaped, 3 of them being severely wounded. Aren't we good, folks? Are we good imperialist terrorists? Right? The British comes over here and then just starts killing all these Native Americans. And then the British accepted them and gave them food and declared Thanksgiving.